Dear students, welcome to the knowledge series. Today we will be discussing on neural network. In the neural network, the area that will be focused in the different series, it will be consisting of the basics on neuron, its structure, then followed by the different learning functions, and also we'll be talking about the macropits neuron architecture and its numerical solutions in the form of a series. Now here in this series we'll talk about a neural network. Now, as the term neural, it indicates that it relates to the nerve cells or a nervous systems, and a network means it's a connections of various nodes. So, according to the Hikins, which has been highlighted here in the year 1994, a neural network is a massive parallel distributed processor that has natural propensity for a strong experimental knowledge and making it available for use. So this was stated by Hikins. Now in the neural network, as the term, it's basically a study of a network that consists of a nodes model of the biological neuron systems, or we can say that it's the mimic of the biological systems in the form of an artificial neural network. Now if you see this particular case, it has been stated that it is having a massive parallel distributed processing systems. That means there are several neuron structures is there, and each neuron is hardly 10 micron long, that operates in a parallel distributed way. Now before we talk about this neuron, let's see some of the terms related to the human brain systems. When we try to see the human brain systems, it has several different structures you can try to see. Among the various structures of the brain, let's see some of the main areas. If you see the forebrain is a fibrous structures, and this is having a cerebral surface on the upper surface, which is used for protections, and that is the largest part of the brain. And this particular cerebrum, which is this particular surface, we can see over this particular display in the cerebrum structures. Normally this is a nerve cells, and it's a gray surface basically. And here in the case of cerebral structures, it is a wrinkler surface. You can see that it's a wrinkler surface, and its area is very big. And this cerebral structures is basically divided into 4 lobes. That is the frontal lobes, parietal lobes, occipital lobes, and as well as temporal lobes. That's how this particular cerebrum surface. Instead of going to the brain structures, let's see some of the 3 brain components. In the brain structures, basic components consist of a forebrain, midbrain, and a hindbrains. Now forebrain is basically a cerebral cortex, and its function is for thoughts and actions. That is how we able to think and how we take it into actions. That is the activities being performed in the forebrains. In the case of a midbrain, it's basically it transmits the neuron impulse from the brain surface to the your spinal cords. So that is the area where this particular midbrain performs, and it transforms the neuron impulse. If you look across the hindbrain areas, it's maintained the balance of the whole body systems. That means our when we walk, how it is balancing in the movement. So all these things has been balanced, controlled by the hindbrain. So instead of going to the other part, let me put in a one word is that this brain has inside in this particular brain there are several collections of nerve systems, neuron systems, structures. Now actually nerves and neurons, these two are two different components. Actually neuron is also known as a nerve cells, that is the smallest unit. Actually nerves is found on the peripheral of our nervous systems, whereas a neuron basically it is found in the brain, and also when we say that it transmits the signals to the spinal cord, so that is the area where the neuron is being found. And neuron duty is its task is to carry the impulse, whereas the nerve actually transmit the informations to the various part of the body. That's how this neuron and nerves are being distinguished from each other. Now let's go further. If you see this one, this particular figure, this is our skull. Inside this you can see that there are several nerve systems is there, and these nerve systems perform all our thoughtful actions, our how we can able to remember, how we can able to visualize, how we perform various activities through our body systems. All these things being controlled by this particular neuron. So that is what has been shown here in terms of another pictorial form is that if you see across this particular case, this is nothing but the representation of each nerves in the form of another representation. When we talk about a particular neuron, so how this particular neuron appears, it is being represented in this in the pictorial forms. So we will be talking about this particular neuron and related to this particular neuron or this particular neuron nerves. We will be talking with further on the artificial neural network, and thereby our topic continues. Now, when we talk about a single neuron, cells, it is being represented in these particular forms, where we use terms like dendrites, where we use a word like a soma, where we use a word like axon. All these words are coming inside this one, and this will be seeing in the further point of our discussions. Now, when we try to see the power of our brain as compared to the as compared to the computer systems, you will find over here is that the processing element in the case of a computer systems, if you take a considerable conventional or a normal systems, it has a 10 to the power of 8 transistors. On the other hand, in this one is having a 10 to the power of 14 synapse. What is that synapse? We will be talking about in the next segment or next discussions of our slides. Here, when we talk about a synapse, something like an active device, when we give a trigger, it is going to produce an output. It is also same thing. A transistor is an active device. When we trigger it, automatically it is going to deliver the corresponding output. Now the size, if you try to see that, this is 10 to the power of minus 6, and this is also 10 to the power of minus 6. So that is how the element size, it is considerably, because of the miniaturizations, it has, if we can match it. But it is if you still goes, the size of this one is very smaller in the forms. And when we talk about a neuron, There are 100 billion neurons are there inside this particular brain cell. Now energy requirement in this case is being as per the analytical study, that is 30 watts, and here it is being also highlighted as 30 watts. Here the processing speed is being put as 100 hertz, and here it has been put across as a 10 to the power of 9 hertz. So that is the processing speed. You can see here in this case the processing speed is very high. It has been put. That is true because of the systems. Here it is a parallel distributed. Here it is a serial and centralized. That's the point is there. Even if we talk about a parallel computing, but that parallel computing cannot match the point of the human brain systems. But because of this processing speed and the way the systems can able to sustain for a longer period, that how the human being cannot able to match with respect to the systems. But on the other hand, where the human being has many other plus points as compared to the systems configurations. Now here the fault tolerance, if you try to say, the systems can able to recover back to a normal based on its programming and based on how that particular system is being designed. But human can able, if there is a fault occurs, human can able to recover back to that to a normal conditions based on its abilities, or based on its system's strength. Now human can able to learn. It keeps on learning. That's what we will see in the neural network. Whereas in this case we have to train the systems, and thereby the systems can able to learn. Now here the intelligent conscious, it is usually intelligent conscious systems, because humans is the one who designs these systems, and how thereby the systems can able to work in the form of a machine. So but machine is cannot able to design a human. So that's why intelligent system is very strong in this area, and here it is not able to match with the human systems. So this is what we talk with respect to the human systems and the machine systems. Now let's see the evolutions of a neural network. Now evolution of a neural network, it has several series of period over which this neural network is being developed. So if you look across the development of a neural network in the evolutions category, you will be finding that way back in the year 1940s, the first human brain development took place, and that time Maclo and Pitts, they tried to develop this particular form of human the artificial form of a human brain system. So that is what took place in the year 1940s. So that is in the year 1943 they delivered that one, but work started from the year 1940s. So they started developing in the logical gates, and we'll talk about this particular area. Way back in 1949, the strength to increase of the this particular neuron, that particular area was studied by the Hebs, and he contributed in the area of the artificial neural networks study in the year 1949. Then coming back to the 1958 to 88, the development on the perceptance, this one was Rosenblatt was one who carried out this particular area of the work, and this took for a long time, and there he tried to talk about weights. What is weight? We'll be seeing that weight is something like, you can think that it is just like you are giving some a trigger, and in that trigger, if you can able to activate any systems, like if a transistor is that you are giving some input bias, input voltage based on the voltage that particular transistor trigger. So in the same way, the weight is something similar to or analogy to that one. I can put for your understanding. So over that area, the Rosenfeld started work. He worked on that area, and thereby he developed the perceptance. And later on, the work continued in 1960. There was a study with respect to the back propagations, and the development of the error was able to identify. So that was, and in the 1972, then there is what you call a clustering of the different data system was taken into considerations, and so that proper separations can be made for the logical conditions. That's how the work started in 1972, and followed by the succeeding years till in 2000. You can see that the SVM classification was, that is support vector machines classification was carried out, and in 2010, today what we talk about a deep neural network is being carried out for the machine learning applications. So that's how the work continue to progress. People are working on this in this particular area, so that the machine that can be a mimic of the human brain can able to match with the human requirement without the presence of a human. So this is how the evolution of a neural network took place. Now, if you go to the neuron doctrine itself, there you will be finding that different peoples who contributed to this particular area was the one was Camillo Golgi, and the other was Santiago Ramo. They developed the study on the area of about the neuron, and they are the one who invented the study of the neurons. These two, Camillo and Santiago. So that was in the way back in the 1890s. That was the period when they invented this the study of the neuron. And further in the year 1906, this Willem Waldeyer, he developed the study with respect to the neuron, and he got the Nobel Prize in the year 1906 in the medicine and the psychology. So he developed the consolidated neural theory itself. So they are the one who started studying the neuron, but the theory about the neuron was developed by Waldeyer. And the further investigation of the structure of the human, it was done by Auguste Forel. Forel, who worked on the area about how the particular human brain structure should appears like. So that's how these are the peoples who worked on the neuron to a larger extent and in depth. Thereby, it has given a way for the others to further carry on. Now, we will go to the basic study on the neuron, biological neuron. Now, what exactly the biological neuron it indicates, and what is the speciality of this biological neuron in this discussion of our study. Now, as I have initially stated to you, is that when we talk about a brain is the organ of the soft nerve tissues. That is the brain, we says, and it contains inside the skull of vertebrates. and its functionality is to coordinate the center of the body. So that is the brain, how the brain is working. So we say that if suppose if this is a brain, so that is inside the skull, and we give input to the brain, and brain thereby give signals to the body. So that's how the entire things take place. So when we talk about the basic structure of the biological neuron, so biological neuron, if you want to understand, so let us see this particular figure. Now thereby you can able to understand what exactly the biological neuron exactly means. So here the idea of the biological neuron is this one, is that you know that inside the brain there are nearly 100 billion neurons cells are there. That is what we call as a neuron, and this neuron has structures. You can take these structures for easy understanding. You remember these structures in these forms. The first part of you start from here. Here you can see that there are several distribution of nerves. The input nerves you can see, the structures of the nerves. So it is just like something like a dendrites. We call it as, this particular section is nothing but a dendrites, and this is the nerves distributions. So this is the input point of the brain structures. So here the dendrites is the spikes form of a distributions what we see over here. So this dendrites collects the input, and it receives the input. From where it receives the input, as I stated, is that there are 100 billion nerves cells are there. So it may be receiving from the previous nerve cells. So from that particular nerve cells, when the signal comes, when the impulse signal comes, these impulse signal are transmitted by the previous cell, and it is receives the impulse signals by the next cell. So when we talk about next cell, when it receives it, so how it is going to receive it is now at this particular dendrite points, the signal comes. It comes to the central point. The central point, this particular point is termed as a soma. So that is the central body. So the central part of the cell body is called soma, and the synapse. Then there is another section is called as synapse here. The synapse is nothing but just you can put it like an output. This is an input, then you can put this one as a information transfer or the output, or we call it as a synapse. And the connections between the input and the output is based on the axon. So that is the one which that process the inputs. So here when we talk about the axon is basically considered as the long thin part of the neuron. So this is basically the longest and the thin part of the neuron structures. That you have to keep it in your mind, that it is the basically the longer. But when we talk about this neuron axon has some further structure of understanding. What is inside this axon? Axon, if you look carefully, axon has some of the structures like the central point. If you see this one, the central point is nothing but a Schwann cell, and that particular cell which is protected by a myelin sheath. So this is the one which protect this particular axon. So when we try to see that the dendrite here is basically a spike structures. So whereas if you see the axon, there is no that particular form of a spike structure, but it does not have any spines. So and moreover, if you look across the axon, it is something like a tube-like form structures. So its duty is to carry the impulse from this point to the next point over here. Up to this particular point, it is going to say. So the nerve cells is to communicate over a long distance. That is a thin cell, which we call it as a axon. So this is the thin cell over which this nerve cells used to transmit. Another thing you have to see this one. The axon also has one duty. Just like when we talk about a transistor, it has a gain, so that will increase the strength. So in the same way, in order to increase the speed of the impulse which is coming from the dendrites towards moving towards the synapse, so this particular axon, which is insulated by the myelin sheath, it will try to increase the speed of that particular impulse. Thereby the signal strength will be reaching to the synapse side at a much high levels. Thereby it can do a triggering actions. And if you look across a soma structure is a spherical structure, and that is the central part of the neuron. This is the neuron's central part, and that contain a nucleus. And the impulse signals which is transmitted from the central of this nucleus is like a trigger signals, and based on the this trigger signal and passing through the axon, once it reaches over here, then at this synaptic point, then there is a actual activation take place. Activation take place means this is a post synaptic, and this is a presynaptic, and this is a post synaptic. So from the presynaptic, once the signal reaches here, at the post synaptic the firing take place, and once the firing is taking place, the impulse is being shifted to the next neuron. And next neuron, when it transmits, you can see again here a dendrites is there. So this it will pass, the central nucleus will accept that one and pass the signal to through the axon to the next synapse. So after next synapse, in the post-synaptic actions, the signal will go to the go further. So this is the cycle. So there are three range you have to remember: dendrites, axon, and synapse. So these three sections, if you can able to draw it, it can able to make you to understand that this is how the basic structure of the neuron is being represented. So this what we see over here, when we convert into the artificial forms, then automatically we will be seeing that these artificial forms will be representing from here to here in the form of a node. One circle you will see. So that is what we termed this as a artificial neural network. Now you see over here. Now here, as you can correlate here this particular point. Now here, what are the points we have taken into consideration? We consider the soma. What is soma? Soma is a cell body, and it is the central part of the neuron, or we can consider it contain inside the nucleus. So when we talk about neuron, so automatically this everything is coming together. So that is how we put this one in the form of a soma, the internal part. So this particular circle, what you are seeing over here, is nothing but a soma. So soma is the point where we are giving a node input, and when we take this one into consideration, dendrites, that means if I draw a line here, that means it shows that a particular spine structure is coming from the previous inputs. So that input is coming to this particular nodes, and from then it goes to the next structure. So now if I'm taking this is coming to one point. Let us take only one. this one particular node is sending a signal to this particular point. So we can take this one into considerations, like it is transmitting a signal, and through an action it is giving to an output. So this output is nothing, a point where our synapse is sitting. So our dendrites is here, our nodes, which is we consider as a nucleus point or the central point soma, which transmit these signals to the output through the action, and that's how we defines. And in the action, what we do is that we give it to the output, and in the output point the synapse is going to trigger the output. And when we talk about this particular node with the multiple nodes, so we termed it as a input layer, and this is the output layer. So this is known as the artificial neural network. Now sometimes we need more than one layer, so we put the figure like this one. This is the input layer. One node is connected to another node, and if there is a here you can see 4 nodes are there in the input layer, and here you can see 3 nodes are there in the hidden layer, and 1 nodes in the output layer. So when we interconnect each other, so you can see that a number of inputs, signals, or number of arrows are interlinked to each other, is being finally reached to the output. Thereby the input signal is being transmitted through a various nodes, and every nodes it will perform. What are the things it will perform? It will take the input, and it will pass through the axon to the synapse, and at the synapse we do as post-synaptic functions, and then we transmit. So that is what it will take place here, it will take place here, it will take place here, it will take place here. So that's how the signal will do its functions. More about this we will be seeing in the next sections. You you have to understand that every time when we show this arrow, we are showing this arrow with some terms, like we call it as a weight. So that what exactly the weight and what are the other components is there, that we will be discussing in the point of our subsequent discussions. So but you have to keep this one in your mind, that all these things is related to the artificial neural network. Now we go further. Now if you try to correlate this particular figure with respect to the figure of the previous whatever I have shown, if you try to see, this is a brain, and inside the brain there are several neurons are there, which is being shown over here, and these neurons it is being further represented, just like how I have represented here, in the form of dendrites, synapse, and here axon. So the soma, cell body, and that's how this representation of a neuron is being shown. And this representation of a neuron, we will be able to represent in this way, that is a neuron structure. We will be seeing further for discussions, and that's how the representation is being shown here. You can see this one when we talk about dendrite structures, and when we talk about action structures. So this is a neuron, this is the representations of the action, where wherever these 2 points meet together, at that particular point our synaptic actions take place, and there how the signal will produce. And that's how the neuron network performs its functional activity. If you want to store something in your in the memory, in artificial memory, then these 2 signals should present over there, and that point wherever the triggering take place, that is the point that particular signal is being saved in the memory, and later on we can able to retrieve. So this is how the basic way of brain, neuron network, neuron structures, and neuron network is being represented. So we will stop here, and next point we'll discuss with the further succeeding continuations of the neural network. Thank you.